Welcome to Brave. Be inspired by the best leaders of Southeast Asia tech. Build the future, learn from our past, and stay human in between. I'm Y.N.W.A, a VC, founder, and father. Join us for transcripts, analysis, and community at www.jeremyau.com. Hey, Alpha, welcome to the show.
Hey, brother Jeremy, man. Happy to be here with you. It's quite exciting to finally put your face to the voice and to all the social media frenzy. This is a great honor and, excited to be with you, brother. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm excited to share your story because I think, you are someone who's tackling one of the most important problems in Southeast Asia, which is talent and the shortage of it and how everyone's scrambling to either get that up and running. So looking forward to discuss the problem, but also your approach to it. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's interesting that, you've had such a, global journey and now you're in Southeast Asia, and I'd love to chat about that too.
Absolutely. No, I think it's exciting for us. You already articulated that workforce upskilling, riskkilling is a challenge. This is across both the formal sector and informal sector, and we are working on something people think it's nearly impossible to solve, but this has been existing for quite some time. Generation to generation, in the United States, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America. Everybody's always thinking, how best can we improve the skills of their workforce, of their manpower, to make sure that they stay competitive. So it's a challenge, but we are doing the best we can to the low scale as much as we could. But yeah, this is an exciting area which we're working on here at ProSpark.
Amazing. So Alpha, for those who don't know you yet, could you introduce yourself and your professional journey?
Good. Okay, so myself, Alpha, I was originally born in Zimbabwe. I spent my young life almost 16 years in Zimbabwe. At about 17 years, I then moved to the United States. So for the past 21 years, I've been living in the U.S. In the U.S., of course, I went to school there. My last school, I graduated from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, where I got my MBA. Spent 2 years at Booth. Did a lot of work within the tech space. Worked for Apple. I worked for Rockwell Automation. Also did some stuff in Johnson Johnson, Proctor Gamble, Siemens, in quite a different companies in the U.S. So yeah, my professional adult life has been within the engineering tech space, right? I've always had a passion for technology, passion for building systems, for building things. So with my education, I was pretty much an automation engineer. So I used to design, like robotics applications, like control system applications, to help different processes in different industries across, Mexico, United States, and other markets all over the world. I've also started two ventures in the U.S. This is not my first venture. Yes, it's my first venture in Southeast Asia, but I started as an e-commerce company when I was in college, and I also started a health and fitness company back in the United States. But my journey of being an entrepreneur didn't start in the U.S. It started from in Zimbabwe, right? My dad has always been an entrepreneur for a very long time. I think as long as I've been alive. I came from a funeral business, so my dad used to run a funeral business, which is pretty much an amazing cash flow business because things are always happening. So I learned about my basic entrepreneurial skills and passion for my father because I had to work in the business. So imagine as a young man, you have to understand the whole funeral processes, how to build a casket, how to do everything you have to do. But in Africa, you have to do what you have to do to survive, right? So I went to school because of that, and my fundamental values of work and hustling, they all came from my father and my mother, because it was just pretty much an entrepreneurial family. But yeah, so the question is, how did I come to Southeast Asia? I think the first trip I took from the US to Asia was when I was working for Apple. This is when we were launching the iPhone 6S and the Apple Watch. So I was at that round when Apple launched that. So I was part of the worldwide operations team. So I took a flight to Shanghai. My first time in China, it was amazing. I stayed at the Westin Hotel by the Bund. But when I was in China, of course, I started to learn a lot of how. I remember I went to Nanjing, where we visited one of the Apple facilities. But then I realized that there's a lot of suppliers who are working with some of these companies, right, from Southeast Asia. And at that point, I was like, man, Southeast Asia, what is Southeast Asia? Okay, interesting. There's Indonesia there, there's Vietnam there. Oh, that could be interesting to go one day. Then I went back to the US, went back to Booth, graduated, and then I moved back to New York City. Right, so I was working. I used to live in Brooklyn, New York, but at that point, I was like, I think there's something going on in Asia. I think Asia is on the cusp of something special. But if you look into the economic and political trends globally right now, China is dominating globally. Most of the investment FDI coming into Africa is coming from China. If you talk about the treasury bills in the United States section is being held by the Chinese. You look at how much investment China is doing in Asia, they're really driving pretty much of the FDI coming in the region. So that tells you something going on there, and that's why I was really passionate about coming to learn a little bit about Asia, right? Because typically in Africa, you see China coming to Africa, and Asian people come to Africa, but you don't see Africans coming to Asia to actually build a business, So I think specifically for us to build ProSpark, when I was in New York working for Colgate-Palmolive after MBA, and I knew at some point I'm going to get out because I'm an entrepreneur. I wanted to learn a little bit about marketing, but I was sick and tired of being on the subway every day from Brooklyn to Manhattan, and I was like, let me come see my brother in Singapore. So I didn't move to Southeast Asia to start a business. All right, that was not the case. I was going to stay 8 days in Southeast Asia, and then I'd go back to New York. Right? I mean, I had a good life, great work, making good money, living in Brooklyn, the best borough in New York City. And then when I got here, I started to travel across Southeast Asia. I got to Singapore. I was like, man, Singapore is expensive, man. I told my brother, I was like, hey, bro, I don't want this, man. I really want to see Southeast Asia. I'm coming from New York. I know taxis to Brooklyn is like $60. And you want to take me back to Singapore? No, I'm good, bro. So I started to travel. I came to Bali, and I was like, oh, man, I fell in love with Bali. And then I went to Bangkok, and I went to Chiang Mai. And from those travels, Manila, I was like, this is amazing. Like I saw a lot of young people. I saw a lot of, these little bikes. I was like, what is this little bike, all over this place with Gojek, right? And it was just like the energy, right? And just the environment and the vibe. And I was like, this is amazing. This is something special, And if you look at the resemblance of Southeast Asia, like Indonesia or Philippines, there's a lot of similarities between Southeast Asia and Africa, right? In terms of the political, economic, and social fabric of the societies. There's a lot of cultural norms that both regions share. And there was a lot of things I started to see that really reminded me about my upbringing, right? And like, why can I not be part of this something special? Like, these regions are growing. There's a lot of investment coming in. It's a lot of young people. It's a lot of little Gojek bikes all over the place. This is a digital revolution going on in the region. So I just realized, this is something interesting there. And then I just reconnected with my co-founder. We've known each other for 18 years from the United States. He's a Manchester United Football Club fan. I'm a Liverpool Football Club fan. And, we've always been enemies. And then we realized that, I think we wanted to do something within the upskilling and reskilling space because we are both educated in the United States. We are both from the emerging markets. And we have always had a passion to go back to the countries or the regions we're from to invest what we've learned from the US and put it back in those regions. So instead of studying 8 days in Southeast Asia, damn, man, it's almost 3 years now. So here I am. I just recently got engaged now. So, I think the journey has been amazing. And, that's how ProSpark began. That's how I started ProSpark with my co-founder, Subhash, in Southeast Asia. And I didn't come here to start a company, but, sometimes life takes you many different directions.
Wow, amazing story. And I really enjoy, not just you sharing about your, pathway and your family, but also, your journey to Southeast Asia and how you built the business. Before we talk about, all the boring stuff about, skilling and the problem that we see in emerging markets, I'm just kind of curious, what did you learn from your dad about, being an entrepreneur?
Hustling, brother. Hustling, man. You know what I'm saying? My father never went to school, or my mom went to school, had the education I've managed to get in my life. Starting a business in Africa is not easy, and starting a business in a country like Zimbabwe is not even easier, right? It's even harder. Imagine during those days when people were starting businesses, these ecosystems or incubators never existed, like for SMEs, right? If they existed, possibly they were only meant for the rich or the people who are political or economically connected in Zimbabwe. But he never had those opportunities that way, right? So he had to grind it out from scratch. Starting with one car and one casket to sell, and they had to build it on his own. And one day he became one of the biggest business person in the whole country. So I think for me it was just about him learning how to build something he has never done before, taking a risk with all his little savings he had. Because my father used to work in a paper mill before he decided to do this. He was one of the journeymen in a paper mill. He was a miner in South Africa in one of those diamonds mines back in the day. So this was his first foray into entrepreneurship, right? So imagine coming from working in a paper mill, and now you're running a funeral business. It's a difficult thing, right? So I think for me, determination and the whole idea of taking risks, right? I think that's what my dad really, actually resembles, and something that he really instills in us. And at the end of the day, bro, hard work. It's all about hard work. Where we're from, we work hard. That's pretty much our DNA. We don't complain. We don't do all of this. We work hard. That is the Zimbabwean spirit. That is the African moji we have. And my dad worked hard, man. I mean, sometimes we sit in that house, right? 11 p.m., you get a call like, hey, Mr. Bumhira, we have somebody who has died like 2 blocks away from our house, and we need your help. So he had to wake up in the morning at 2 in the morning, and he has to take his car to help the family take the body to whatever it needs to go to, because that was our business. Then he comes back home at 4 in the morning, another call comes at 4:30, and then he wakes up again, he goes out, right? So I think those small life experiences really shaped my thinking. It shaped the way I look at life. Most importantly, as you know, building a company, Jeremy, is hard. Building a startup is not easy. But I tell people like this is nothing for me, man, because where I'm from and where we started, that's even harder. You come from Zimbabwe, man, you can make it anywhere in the world. You live in New York, you can even make anywhere else better in the world, right? So ProSpark to us is a project, and I know it's difficult to start a venture. And for me, of course, this was like a leap of faith. I'm not from Asia. I'm not from Southeast Asia. My family is not from here. I don't speak the language. And I don't, only person I have is my brother who lives in Singapore working for Johnson Johnson. And, I'm the one who's more like the crazy adventurer in the family. But I think through the journeys of life, not only for ProSpark, going to the US at 17 years old by myself, those experiences already being shaped by the way I was brought up in Zimbabwe, right? And the successes, the failures, which I've experienced in my journey, what keeps me going is the ideals and values my mom and dad taught me of hard work, right? Determination, hustling. At the end of the day, it's all about hustling, brother. It's all about hustling, feel the pain, and just keep moving. That's the Zimbabwean spirit, which I bring in Asia. It's special. Cannot get it anywhere in Asia. Can only get it in Zimbabwe.
Only can get it from you, Alpha. What was it like, obviously, you came to Asia and it's with the energy, right? The same frontier energy that you had and moving to the States and pushing yourself professionally to the next stage. And so here you are in Southeast Asia, and you've really made a decision to be like, okay, I'm going to be close to, a brother, family. This is somewhere I want to, sink my roots in. How did you come about thinking and discovering the problem about talent and reskilling?
Very good. Very good. I think if you look into this way, right, if you haven't been born in Zimbabwe and moving to the United States, there's a reason we all moved to UK, United States, some of these countries, right? Because part of that, we want to go to the best engineering schools. We want a better education system. We want to learn in different companies, which you might not have that experience to work in your own home country, right? One of the things you see that at the end of the day, in major markets, especially in Africa, for example, or even in Southeast Asia, the education system sometimes is very educating you to pass a test, educating you to go to the next level, but not really thinking about application, not really think about how can you use these skills to start a business, to build the next microchip, right? Application-wise, those things are areas which needs to improve in most of the emerging markets. And then when you move to the US, I'm sure as you have also lived in other countries, Jeremy, you start to say, man, the first thing you get there in the college, they already say internship. 3 months later, you have to intern for a company, which means you need to understand what is a cash flow model, what is a Laplace function to build a control. I'm like, I don't even know none of this stuff, right? Because I thought I'm going to come here, I'm going to take as many A's as possible, get a nice certificate, nice degree, and then I'm going to get a job after I graduate. So what you see that in some of these developed countries, there's a huge emphasis of teaching application skills, teaching creative thinking, analytical thinking, entrepreneurial thinking, right? And then you see some of the opportunities in emerging markets. Some of those things really lack, right? People go to school because they just have to go to school because everybody's doing it, right? Or I go to school because I got to pass a test, and then I get a job. But on day one on the job, they are not ready for it, right? And that's what creates the imbalance in terms of the productivity, in terms of, economic development, in terms of workforce mobility or workforce upbringing between the developed nations and the developing nations, right? And then when I went to work for Apple, I was blown away. My experience at Apple was unbelievable, right? The first day I walked into that building, I thought I was going to get cookies and, donuts and everything. And say, oh, welcome. Spend the whole weekend in just looking at the campus and enjoying sushi in Sunnyvale or San Jose. It was not the case, bro. The first day they told me, like, listen, this is the problem we are facing. Of course, I'm going to discuss more on this platform. What should we do? This is the first day, dude. And they gave me a marker and say, give us a solution. What do you do in that situation, right? So rarely we find those opportunities in emerging markets. Not to say it doesn't exist, but it's not that culture that teaches you to think that way. And then when I came down here, what I realized, even my co-founder also, who was working a lot on this when he was back in Asia, because he moved from Chicago back to Singapore. He was living also in Hong Kong. When he was coming down in Southeast Asia, he goes to many different meetings. And he was like, Alpha, there's something about the workforce here. Like when you call to a meeting, people come to work at 8 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, everybody go to get coffee. At 1 o'clock, everybody go to lunch. 5 o'clock, people pack and they leave. All right. In the meeting, people are not really speaking their mind. There's this something that's lacking in terms of, the whole analytical thinking, creative thinking. And then when I started just to talk to people and myself and visiting different companies and meeting a lot of Chicago Booth alumni in all these countries, I started to see that similar trend. And then I said, okay, how are people trained in this part of the world? How do you do your trainings? How do you empower these millennials or these current people in the workforce? And then you start to understand, like, wow, the training infrastructure is still very traditional, right? In a classroom training, one size fits for all. And it's not really personalized to the micro level at an individual level. So then how do you change a society if you're using one size fits for all model? And you look at a country like Indonesia, you have more than 20-something thousand islands. You cannot fly people to more than 100 islands to train each and every different banking location. It's impossible infrastructure-wise. In Singapore, yes, but not in Indonesia at scale. Same thing as in the Philippines, same thing as in Vietnam, same thing as in Thailand. So we realized that that's where the issue or part of the problem could be. Not only that's the issue, but also, of course, education system, like I think I already talked about, right? Maybe there's an improvement that needs to be done there. But when people come already to the workforce, they're already in the workforce. So what can we do with the people in the workforce? At least maybe to give them a little bit of a nudge, of a competitive edge, right? To make them believe themselves that I can gain another skill, I can learn something different, that I can be able to work with people in different functions. And we talk to people in so many different industry sectors, both the formal sector and the informal sector, and we realize this is something that had to be addressed, right? You look at the United States, UK, Australia, this is something that has been addressed for more than 2-3 decades. And Africa and Southeast Asia are now coming up there. China and India are a little bit ahead of us, maybe 4, 5, 6 years ahead of us. I'll say Indonesia is where India was in 2016, where China was possibly in 2010, all right? So Now it's a matter of how can we take these economies to drive them towards where they need to get to, but at the same time, the key driver is manpower. Is the manpower ready for what's need to come, and are they able to really become the foundation of the change and the development the countries need? That's the problem we identified, and that's what ProSpark is working on, and that's what keeps me up at night all day.
Amazing. And that's a great discovery of the problem. And you said something special, right? Which was that this is not an uncommon problem, right? This is a common problem across multiple regions, across a region. And then earlier you also said across all emerging markets. So it seems like it's a common problem, right? Because every year, every business owner is saying like, okay, we don't have enough people. We can't find the right folks. And then there's lots of executives who are saying the same thing, right? We can't hire the right folks. We can't find them. And then there's also lots of people who are junior folks who are like, I can't get a job, right? So it always feels like a bit mind-boggling, right? Because everyone's just complaining about a problem, but then you're like, at some level, it doesn't make sense. And of course, what you're kind of talking about is really about the reskilling, the adult education piece that makes it all possible, right? And obviously, I think there's a little bit more obvious in a developed market like the US or in Singapore, where the truth is everybody now knows that there's lots of jobs in technology, for example. So lots of people, I recently just talked to someone and he was like, he just reskilled and went for an adult education course where, he was more of a, white collar office worker. And then he just, reskilled in becoming a data scientist. And he just graduated from a small boot camp, right? In his goal to join the technology sector. So I think and he was in the US, of course. So we're just celebrating over WhatsApp and so forth. But it feels like a lot of that infrastructure just doesn't exist, right, in emerging markets. So can you just tell us and walk us through why it's such a common problem in emerging markets globally?
Very good, very good. I think you really highlighted something interesting, Jeremy. It's very important to highlight that the issue of workforce reskilling, upskilling exists both in the developed markets and developing markets. Okay, in the developed and developing markets. It's more prevalent in the developing nations, the emerging markets, for obvious reasons. Okay, I was reading an article yesterday in the New York Times of what's happening in the United States as of now. When you look at this problem, there's a pre-pandemic structural issues within the labor force, the in-pandemic structural issues in the labor force, and also the future post-pandemic structural concerns or issues in the labor force. Right now in the United States, there's a lot of grocery chains that are having a challenge to find people to come back to work. Okay? There's a lot of hotels now that are actually giving free hotel rooms just to get employees to come back to work. And they're actually giving a guaranteed entrance. I think it's Omni Hotel. I think it's Omni Hotel. Entrance into a management trainee program, and you get a free hotel room for those 3 months, just to induce people to come to work because people have left. All right. So it's very, of course, I went to Chicago both economics as well. It's very interesting for us. The whole labor supply, labor demand curve is being shifted left to right. It's amazing how this pandemic has really changed the game. Right. And then you also start to think about, in terms of numbers, it cost a company in the north of maybe $12,000 to $15,000 just to replace an hourly wage employee in the United States. I'll show maybe the numbers in Southeast Asia could be maybe 3,000-4,000, a quarter of that, which is very, very big because of the GDP and also for the income levels and things to think about that. Imagine the problems which are faced, for example, in the US. Right, the article was all over the place. You guys can go on. It was in Wall Street Journal, it's the New York Times, and think about what could be happening in Indonesia, for example, right, during the pandemic. Right, people have been working remotely. Restaurants have literally, some have to shut down. Companies had to really revamp their approach to office work from home policies and office occupancy rate and all those different things. Right. So if this problem is a challenge there, think about how significant this problem could be, even more challenging for countries such as this Southeast Asia or in Africa. The reason this problem exists is this. part of that is it's not just a one man's issue, right? Think about the combination between the formal sector, informal sector, private sector, and public sector. The solution to fix this issue cannot be done just only by private sector. The solution to there has to be, the governments of the region in Indonesia or Philippines or Vietnam, they have to create or they have to continue to develop policies, okay, that fosters innovation, that fosters people to learn different skill sets within their own countries, right? Do you have the right tax policies to incentivize companies that are investing in the future of work in your countries? Do you have the right management training programs or technical training programs or vocational training programs? Because not everybody wants to go to university. How much of those skill sets or environments programs exist outside the formal workforce for people to work and learn different skills which they can transfer to the formal sector in the future if they decide to do so? All right. So the question is, how effective, not only do they exist, those programs, are they even effective? Or they're pretty much, as people always say, man, sometimes working for the government is inefficient. For me, I don't really believe in big government. I believe in small and efficient government, right? Don't call me a Republican, but this is what I believe in, right? So I believe in a government that works effectively. When you think about Singapore, whatever you guys have there, it's unbelievable, right? Same thing as what Rwanda in Africa is doing. They're pretty much working with the Singaporeans and really replicating the Singaporean model. And it's working for the country in Rwanda, right? So when you look in terms of the government programs, government incentives, government investments, and building that culture of learning, that's very important. And if that doesn't exist in countries where pretty much the governments pretty much are the like the big dogs, right? Everything evolves around the government. In America, there's a different animal over there, right? So some people don't believe this government should ever exist. Some people do. So in these countries in Southeast Asia where governments play a significant role in the advancement of the nation, in the advancement of the people's lives, I think there's an area there where we can do a better job or really innovate, find better ways of addressing this issue. And then on the other hand, on the private sector, right? When you think in terms of companies, I also think that the whole top-down approach, like everything comes from the CEO, everybody has to follow. And I understand in Asia, it's a culture. I respect it. I understand that. That doesn't really help you in the long term. You know why I say that? I think people, employees, should be the stakeholders in self-developing themselves, right? If you force somebody to do something because it's compliant, because they just have to do it, they just check a box, right? So individual responsibility sometime or individual motivation, it might not exist at that point. So I think the issue in the private sector is, what are we doing in the private sector to create that environment that allows people want to learn something different? That allows people to say, I'm going to learning for training to Bali, and they don't think that's just a holiday. People go to training sometimes in these markets because it's a vacation from work. Why not? Who doesn't want to go to Bali? I'm sure you wanted to go to Bali, Jeremy, right? For a week. I go 8 hours in a room, maybe 30 minutes, I'm paying attention. The other time I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm not really paying attention. Remember, these markets are driven by millennials. The workforce, maybe possibly 60%, 65% is driven by millennials. They learn differently. They want something different. So as you see, I look at the spectrum from the public sector, government policy. Is the government creating the right incentives or the environment that fosters learning within the workforce? At the same time, is on the private sector, the responsibility is on the employee, the workforce itself, and the employer. Are we creating the right environment within your company that allows people to foster, to see a career progression in the right way, and they really want to become part of it? If they don't want to become part of something special, they don't even know one day maybe they could be like a Jeremy running a podcast or other ventures, or they can be the CEO, or they can be the managing director, and they just work every morning and just go to work. It just becomes a paycheck transaction between a company and an employee. They have no incentive to do even something better. So a solution will be definitely a close collaboration between the private sector and the public sector to really, really address this issue. And what I'm happy to see now is the startup community. Startup community is now becoming the heartbeat between the private sector and the public sector to address it. So I think the disruption is now being brought in by the likes of ProSparks, the Ruangurus, and all those other players to really find a way to address this ongoing issue.
I really like what you said about how, these talents is really solved by really a public and private partnership working together to get all of that, squared away. And I think it was an interesting insight as well that in the emerging markets, the majority of the workforce is not boomers, like those in the developed markets, but actually millennials, right? And I think that's a really interesting insight. And of course, last thing that's interesting is that in education, is intrinsic motivation is very, very important. And I would say even more so because we're talking about adult learners, right? I think as a kid, if you're asked to study math or chemistry, you just do it because everyone else is doing it and you just follow along. Whereas for an adult, you have your own boundaries, you know what you're interested in, you can say no, right? And like you said, you can vote no by paying attention or not paying attention. So from the question I have is what makes adult education reskilling different from other forms of education or ed tech? Because, we kind of talked a little bit about it just now already, right? Adults can say no. Young students can't really say no, right? Because the parents and teachers are there. Adults can choose not to pay attention because they can be on the phone and check the box. And students have no choice but to get graded, right? There you go. And then, adults get paid, at a job, and the students don't get paid anything, right? But what makes, adult education different as a form of education from other forms of education?
I think you already answered the question, Jeremy. There it is. You already got the answers already.
Well, I'm just paraphrasing what you just told me. So you should tell me more of that good stuff. Yeah,
bro, you just literally took the words out of my mouth, right? I think sometimes we need to do a better job of taking a step back, right? And ask yourself, why do adults want to learn something new, right? For me, I have I think I have 4 degrees already. Do I want to go back to school? No. Do I want to do something different? No, I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to take any exams, right? I'm not motivated to do it, right? So for just by that self, right? I'm a good example of somebody who just I've had to have enough education, right? I think I don't want to go back to school. But why? It's because there has to be an incentive of why I have to learn something different, right? There has to be a motivation of why I should go back and leave ProSpark and maybe go to Harvard, go back to Chicago Booth for a PhD in business or whatever. There has to be an incentive. There has to be motivation, right? So you're right. Incentive plus motivation. That's what makes it very hard. Adult learning is very, very hard. And don't forget, maybe people are married, people have kids, people have life responsibilities, people have family commitments. The game at that point becomes a little bit different. So then with motivation plus incentive plus life commitments or life responsibilities, with that comes in what we call flexibility. They need flexibility. The key is flexibility here, right? So now we have all these different things all coupled down with the biggest. If you ask anybody, I want to be flexible. I don't want to go sit in a classroom from 8 to 5. I want to do it in traffic, maybe from 5 to an hour a day. You don't meet an adult who wants to, maybe 10% of them, 90% they still want to keep their lifestyle and maybe learn something on the side. They want flexibility at the end of the day, right? And they need a clear direction of, if they learn the data science class you already talked about, how is it going to help me in my current role? How is it going to help me to move in my company laterally or vertically, right? How is it going to help me? If that's not clear, they're not going to do it. But the difference between the United States or some of these developed nations and emerging markets, because in America, you have no option but to get your shit right. You know what I'm saying? You have to get your life right. You know what I'm talking about, Jeremy. You have to learn. If you want to compete in Silicon Valley, it's not enough just to go to Stanford. You have to continuously learn to keep up with competition because the environment and the ecosystem is built around that kind of a culture of thinking. All right. And then now, when we bring the same kind of thinking to these markets, if you say, oh, everybody needs to learn data science, it's going to take some time for people to be convinced, to understand itself why I should learn it and how is it going to help me in my current role. All right. So you work in marketing, you work in supply chain, you work in finance, you work in IT, you work in data analytics. Possibly the person doing data analytics, IT will be like, I think I understand the clear cut. But the person doing marketing might also get a lot of learnings from data science because now, at Chicago Booth, we did a lot of what we call data-driven marketing. Booth is known for data, right? Marketing is now pretty much driven by data. It has been driven, but I think data is taking over. Anything else, intuition, all of that stuff, I think it's now lagging. Marketing, data is now driving marketing across the board, all right? So I think that's what makes it different from the traditional learning that is only being like you have to go to school to get a degree. That's the only way you can get a job. Oh, I have to apply, I have to go to school, right? So I think when it comes to formal sector adult learning, it's one of the most challenging area to work in or to play in because you have to change your mindset, right? You have to imagine talking to somebody who's 45 years old who has never used e-learning platform before and say, hey, we now have access to thousands of content on their platform. You can access it, you can learn something different. They were like, you're crazy. I'm not doing it, right? Or maybe I'll log in once every 3 months because I want to make sure I continuously go to offline training areas and do those things. So these are some of the challenges you'll face within the adult learning space.
Wow, that's a lot of truth there. You've been, very successful in terms of like your professional journey, in terms of geography, as a professional leader and now founder. There must have been tough times and challenges that you've had to overcome. Could you share with us a time when you faced a challenge and that you overcame it and had to choose to be brave?
I think there's always been, in a journey as this. First, I would say I am privileged to be on this path. I am honored to be doing what I love. Not everybody has a chance to do what they love. Building ProSpark has been perhaps one of the pinnacle of my life journey. I'm not the first to do this, and definitely I won't be the last. But I am happy that I'm working on something that I'm passionate about. I'm working on something that I can see a significant change in the society. But with that also has come some challenges, doing this. Growing up in Zimbabwe and having to move to the US by yourself with not a lot of resources, was difficult, bro. Okay, I didn't leave America with my mother's father's money. Like, some other people have a challenge. Like, they go to UK and the transfer arrives. They have a nice bank account. They're living in Central Park, overlooking Manhattan. I didn't have that opportunity, bro. When I left Zimbabwe, the inflation. Okay, I'm sure you heard about the hyperinflation in Zimbabwe. I'm sure you saw stories across the board. You can Google. We had like $1 trillion currency, $100 billion currencies, one bill. I don't know what would you buy with that. When I left to Zimbabwe, and by the time I arrived in the United States, inflation had grew by more than 250%. Right? And the government actually put financial controls on foreign currency exchange. So I got to the US with not a lot of resources, bro. All I had was just hope. Imagine you're only 17, 18 years old at that point. Right? So the father is like, hey, bro, I have the money in Zimbabwean dollars, but I cannot transfer it because I cannot get the foreign currency. So I'm not somebody who went to the United States with, I'll call it, with a spoon in my mouth, unlimited resources. Everything is already given for me. Everything I've managed to build on my own was just grinding it out. I would say, if I'm to say, that was also one of the landmark challenge I had to overcome because here I am, you're on a visa, like as you know, and you have to go to school. So then you're being told there's no money, and if you don't go to school, your visa is canceled. You have to go back to Zimbabwe and face what's happening out there. So, and you're only a kid, 17 years old. You're not an adult, bro. You're not adult enough, right? And you're new. I'm still new to the United States. All I have is my god sister and my uncle, but and there's nothing much you can do at that point. I think part of that for me was, number one, the people who has been surrounding me. My father, there's a lot of friends in the religion space. My father is a Christian. There's a lot of pastors who actually opened the door for me. And there's some other two guys, Norman and Nick. I met one of the guys. Remember, I'm going to school. I'm like, listen, I haven't paid my tuition, bro. In Atlanta, my first school was Atlanta Metropolitan College. I haven't paid my tuition. I don't have the money, bro. I just cannot, I negotiated with the Office of Financial Aid and say, we don't sponsor international students. I went to the BESA office and say, listen, things are tough. Just, let me just pay $500 right now. Give me another 2 weeks. There's nothing that's going to come in 2 weeks. You're just playing for time. And I met the other guy on the phone booth, and he was speaking my language. So yeah, I'm walking out of this office of BESA where you pay your school payments, right? And then I'm walking in, the phone booth, and this guy is talking in my language with Sean. I was like, damn, this is a guy from my country. Let me wait till he's finished his phone and say hello to him. And I say, hey, man, Norman. He died actually already in 2007. Norman, how are you? And then we spoke. I was like, oh, you from Zimbabwe? I was like, yeah, I'm from Zimbabwe, bro. And that conversation changed everything. To the point that at some point, 3 months later, the guys, they opened the doors from their house, and I actually moved to live with them. They gave me a place to stay. They helped me to pay my tuition. They gave me food. They gave me clothing. And if I'm to look back, my father's friends, Pastor Eva, Pastor Kagoro, and these guys actually opened the door for me. How do you overcome that? You know why? Because I knew where I was coming from. It's all hustle and grind. And, if I have to do something special, I have to go through those shadows of death. Imagine somebody telling you like, Alpha, maybe most likely we have to buy your ticket to go back to Zimbabwe. After I've been trying to come to the US, 4 or 5 times being refused a visa. And somebody says, go back. Nah, bro, that's not going to happen. We're going to figure it out. All right. So, then when you think about building ProSpark, fast forward 20-something years later, the challenge of building this is very hard. Sometimes, I'm not from Asia. I don't look like you, Jeremy. I'm not from here. I don't speak the language. And there's not a lot of people who look like me in Asia, in Southeast Asia, who's doing this. Right? I don't see a lot of black founders in Southeast Asian tech. I'm sure there are some. I'm still looking for more. Right? So it's not a lot of examples of people who look like me who have done this before. So when things go bad, like for example, ProSpark is about to run out of money, you cannot raise capital, you're going to get a customer, what do you do? So I think for me, it all comes back to the things which I have seen, right? Which I've experienced myself. Like if I was able to do what I've managed to do in the US, going to US with only $250 and be able to graduate from the University of Chicago and having a master's bachelor's degree in computer science, in electrical engineering, and another degree in computer science, work for Apple, Proctor Gamble, J&J, and now I'm running a company in ProSpark in Southeast Asia, in multiple countries. Bro, life is crazy. That's all I can say. Life is fucking crazy, man. Seriously. All right? That's to me, it's not about me. It's the hustle my mom and dad taught me running a funeral business. It all comes back to that. My own grandmother telling me like, in Africa we work. All right? It's not about how smart I am, but it's just the values of hard work, endurance, determination. I might not be the smartest person in the room, but I bet you I'll be competitive when it comes to, determination. I'll win that battle. Come rain or come thunder, I'll give you a run for your money when it comes to, the whole determination. You might be the smartest. I won't be the smartest. But in terms of determination, you got to be ready. Don't make me tear up, bro. Don't make me shed tears and shit, man. I don't want to do it. But I'm speaking from my heart right now, And to me, that's what we're doing at ProSpark. And to sit here today and what we have managed to accomplish with ProSpark 3 years later, And I woke up today, I saw that ProSpark has been featured in the University of Chicago Polsky Center of Entrepreneurship mailing. We're all over the world. We've been invited to the GSV, Global Silicon Valley Summit for EdTech in San Jose. ProSpark is representing Southeast Asia with three other companies in EdTech. I'm sorry, bro. I'm just a kid from Zimbabwe, man. I mean, that's all I am, bro.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. That's quite right. Thank you so much. And I think I would love to summarize like the three big themes that I got away from this so far. I think the first is thank you so much for sharing about your childhood and what was it like to grow up in your family. Obviously, I've never been there and I have no idea what's it like to grow up, alongside you. And it was just nice to just hear about what you learned from your father, but also from your community and from your country. In terms of education, but also in terms of grit and determination as well. And of course, the second thing I'm really thankful for is you sharing, your perspective on, the talent space, right? Obviously just being more thoughtful about, on one level, what's the difference between developed markets versus developing markets? And there's a lot of difference between how education is handled. But also the second layer, also the difference between classic education and education technology versus adult education, education technology. And we talked about incentive, motivation, and life commitments being things that translate into a requirement and desire for flexibility and clarity about what and why we're learning. And lastly, of course, thank you so much for sharing about, the fact that life is crazy and that you have the Zimbabwe spirit of really pushing hard. And I think not just at a theoretical level about how every founder needs to be brave, but also I think the bravery that you exhibited, moving countries and working hard and asking for help and getting help from the people around you to get to the next stage. And I never got to meet Norm, and I'm sorry to hear about his passing, but I'm sure that he must be so proud of where you have grown over the past 20 years. So it's just amazing.
Yeah, man. Jeremy, it's a wonderful pleasure to have this opportunity to speak with you. Of course, thank you for reinstating Norman and Nick. Those are my two forever, my two brothers who adopted me in the U.S. And I'm sure Norman, wherever he is, he's looking down and say, okay, I think Alpha, the crazy guy I kidnapped from the phone booth, is doing something interesting. So, I'm honored to be speaking with you, and I'm honored to be on this ProSpark journey. And, Southeast Asia is amazing. It's a great place with wonderful people. Indonesia is unbelievable. Philippines is amazing. Vietnam is beautiful. The people of this region has been amazing to us. It's been amazing to me. I've been welcomed here with open arms to the point that I decided to have a fiance in Indonesia. So, this has never been part of the plan. Growing up, I thought I was going to, be married in the United States, live in the U.S. Life is good. But here I am, bro. You just never know where life takes you. For me, when my time is up, one day when say, oh man, the guy died a month ago or 2 months ago, I just want to be somebody who's remembered like this guy was crazy. He did crazy things and he walked a crazy path. I hope he doesn't wake up again.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming to the show, Alpha.
Thank you, Jeremy. Love you, brother. Thank you for the time, bro.
Thank you for listening to Brave. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share this episode with friends and colleagues. Sign up at www.jeremyau.com to discuss this episode with other community members in our forum. Stay well and stay brave.